All right, guys, welcome to the Pop Culture Podcast. Here to do what I started this channel to do is to review the Rings of Power. So I'm not going to trash this show and say it's total dumpster fire like some people are saying. No, I don't really think the show so far is that great. Some of my thoughts right away are not blown away by the main character Galadriel. I think it's because, I should say, as someone who really loves Lord of the Rings story, loves the Lord of the Rings books, read the Silmarillion, the Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, Unfinished Tales. I read them multiple times, so I'm really familiar with the lore. And I have a hard time kind of putting the lore that's in the back of my head and connecting that to the TV show because obviously the TV show is just going way outside the Tolkien lore in the books. So it's a little bit tough. So I should try to, for better or worse, maybe that's kind of where I'm coming from, and maybe I should try to just look at the show for what it is, and maybe that it's sort of separate from the book lore. But I don't know, that'd be tough to do. So Galadriel. We kind of see in the beginning that she takes up the quest of her brother Finrod, and they kind of show that Finrod maybe died at the end of the First Age in the main battle with Morgoth. Again, that's not accurate with the Tolkien lore, with the Silmarillion. And then Galadriel takes up kind of his mission to find Sauron. And for whatever reason, everyone in the Elven Kingdoms believes that Sauron, even though they never found him or killed him, that he's just gone, and rather best to not look for him rather than try to find him. I don't fully understand the logic there, but so Galadriel has been on this mission. Ultimately, she's asked to give up her mission, and for her work, she is able to go into the far west and back to Valinor. Again, that doesn't make sense to me. Galadriel was always someone who wanted her own kingdom, and she, was always tempted by power a little bit, and ultimately, as shown in the Peter Jackson movies, she resisted the ultimate power and resisted the ring that Frodo offered to her. She said she passed the test and she would go into the West, and that's part of her journey. She came to Middle Earth to seek to rule a realm of her own, and ultimately she gave up on having ultimate power, and that's why she was able to go back to Valinor. But I guess she's able to go back to Valinor in this show, but of course she decides not to, and I'm not gonna get into the whole. I'm not really a student of movie critiques or TV critiques. I can't really speak to that too eloquently, but I can just say it felt kind of weird that she just decided to jump off the boat and make a swim for it back to Middle Earth. And I guess that kind of starts to get into episode 2. So I'll kind of finish up my thoughts about episode 1. The Harfoots / Hobbits. I guess it's sort of creative that the Hobbits or the Harfoots, that they were never really noticed by other races of Middle Earth because they're always in hiding, and I think that's kind of interesting that that they've always been hiding in east of the Anduin, and that's sort of a clever way to kind of gloss over the fact that hobbits don't really appear in the history of Middle Earth until the Third Age. But still, I think the storyline, with Gandalf, not Gandalf, coming in the comics, I'm not really too interested in that. I don't know, it just doesn't seem that interesting to me. And the fact that this person who I think is going to be a wizard, probably Gandalf, showing up in the Second Age, again, that doesn't jive with the lore, and it just not something I wanted to see. So I guess back to the third plot line that appears in the first episode is the Men of the South, and who are being watched over by, I believe it's Sylvan Elves, and Arondir, the new character, is a part of that group of elves that's kind of overlooking the Southron / Easterlings that in the past were, in line with with Morgoth, with the enemy. And again, I don't know, maybe I'm looking too far into it, but it seemed like there was a scene where a young lad was telling the elves to forget the past, move on, it's over. It seemed a little bit, I don't know, on the nose about contemporary political messaging, but again, I don't want to get too deep into that. Maybe it's something I just that struck with me, and maybe that's not what the writers meant. But one thing I do not want to see is too much contemporary political messaging in this show, and I don't know, it seemed like to be sneaking in right there. What else? We have, oh yeah, I guess in general the story with the Southern Men, I think it's kind of interesting that we get to see what Mordor was like prior to the coming of Sauron, the prior to the ascendance of Sauron as the Dark Lord of Middle Earth. And I'm not 100% sure if that's up to lore, whether Mordor was once at least a thriving or at least a livable place for men to live. But yeah, I think it's interesting to kind of see what Mordor was like prior to Sauron becoming the leader of the land. That's interesting. The entire Arondir and Bronwyn plotline, I'm kind of iffy on. Not too sold on it, but yeah. My favorite plot line, I think, well, I guess there's maybe more into episode 2, so maybe but it's the plot line with Elrond and Celebrimbor. I like those characters, but one thing I'll say, I'll just kind of finish up what happens in episode 1. So Gil-galad, the High King of the Noldor, he seems like kind of a jerk and kind of like not that great of a leader and kind of distrusting of his people and kind of maybe micromanaging a little bit too much to the point where he wants to get Galadriel out of his hair essentially so they can just pretend everything's all good. Don't really like that because Gil-galad, in my opinion, was one of the greatest High Kings of the Noldor, if not the greatest, maybe him or Fingolfin. But yeah, Gil-galad, the warrior. Actually, I won't spoil it, but the lore. He's a great warrior who led the last alliance to the ultimate defeat of Sauron, and hopefully to depict his epic battle with Sauron at the end. He doesn't seem like the character. He doesn't seem to be the character that is capable of doing that at this point. I don't like that for the Gil-galad character. And painting Elrond as sort of this weird politician, I'm kind of so-so on that as well. Elrond is a leader. Elrond is, the herald of Gil-galad, sure. But he also leads his armies in the upcoming war with Sauron, and being painted as this kind of maybe, I don't know, politicking, scheming elf is kind of weird to me. But eventually Gil-galad sends him on a mission with Celebrimbor. Celebrimbor, the grandson of Feanor, who created the Silmarils. And they kind of gloss over the whole history of the Silmarils. And I guess they had to because of rights and stuff like that. I think they actually did a pretty good job kind of summarizing why the elves came back to Middle Earth from Valinor. I won't kind of knock the show too much for that. I think they did the best with what they had. So nothing too terrible there. But so Celebrimbor, the grandson of Feanor, has ambition to create something great and lasting. And I wonder what that could be. I think the conversation between Elrond and Celebrimbor about creating something lasting was probably one of the more enjoyable scenes of the show so far. And Elrond has the idea of enlisting the dwarves for help. And which sounds great. The dwarves are great miners, craftsmen. I think it's a good idea. Elrond goes to Khazad-dûm, and I will say that Khazad-dûm, seeing what Khazad-dûm was like prior to its downfall in the Third Age, kind of seeing it as this thriving dwarf kingdom was really cool. And I think of all the visuals, I think a lot of people are giving credit to the show for being visually stunning. I kind of have an opposite take. I think besides Khazad-dûm, which is really cool to see, the big CGI stuff, I wasn't a huge fan of. I much prefer the miniatures or the bigatures used in the Peter Jackson trilogy. I think those were looked a lot better on the screen and were more captivating to me. And the sets in general, I wasn't really captivated by the sets that they used in this show. Besides Khazad-dûm, I think Khazad-dûm seeing it for the first time, that was really cool. And maybe that scene in the woods between Elrond and Galadriel, where there are carvings in the trees, that's cool. A little bit of fan service, kind of showing the old legends of of Middle Earth, like Luthien and Huan the Hound, I believe it was. And I think Finrod and maybe Fingolfin were carved in there as well. And seeing those characters, that was kind of cool fan service. So I appreciate that. But other than that, I don't know. The big CGI stuff doesn't really uh, do it for me. So Elrond goes to Khazad-dûm. There's this weird game that they play, breaking rocks. I thought that was kind of silly. I'm not sure how I feel about the character during the fourth. It seems kind of silly. I didn't really like the thought that he was just bitter that Elrond wasn't there for his wedding. I mean, in the Middle Earth, besides the wedding of, Aragorn and Arwen, the weddings aren't really a big deal. And I don't know, maybe it seems like a really contemporary thing to just throw into a medieval fantasy show that this guy's pissed that he didn't come to his wedding, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I don't know. Just seemed kind of corny to me. It's an unnecessary conflict there. Um, but we'll see how that storyline unfolds. It seems that the dwarves have unlocked the power to gather some mithril and maybe greater powers in the depths of Khazad-dûm. So we'll see. And the Arondir story about the orcs maybe thriving in Moria, perhaps carving the way for Sauron to eventually take over Moria. I'm not trashing that just yet, but yeah, we'll see. And the elves. I mean, again, I like Celebrimbor and Elrond. That's kind of my favorite, piece of action that's going on right now. But again, some of the characters, like how they characterize Elrond and Gil-galad. Celebrimbor is okay. But I don't like, and again, Galadriel, just not a fan of her. I guess I'll talk about the Harfoots. Again, Gandalf, not Gandalf, appears, and yeah, I just don't like the idea of hobbits and wizards being involved in the Second Age. So, but Galadriel on the boat finds a guy named Halbrand, who, I don't know, seems to be the most edgy character on the show so far. Kind of maybe morally ambiguous. He seems to be a guy who is willing to just save himself instead of, even if that means being pragmatic, saving himself, even if that means potentially killing other people. But doesn't seem to be evil just yet, but just pragmatic, and we'll see. Just they'll probably end up in Numenor, but again, to be seen. Yeah. So overall, Halbrand could be an interesting character. I wonder if he has a secret identity. People are guessing at. Excited to see Numenor, see what it looks like. But if it's just gonna be a bunch of big CGI stuff, not too crazy about that idea. And I'm really interested and a little bit actually worried to see how the collapsed timeline that they're working with, how the idea of the men of Numenor being afraid of their immortality and therefore going against the Valar, how that, in this collapsed timeline, how that's going to work. And I don't know, just kind of worried about how that's going to work, but we'll see. I'm not trashing the show just yet, but it was okay. 5 out of 10. Maybe that's not great for Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, but I'll watch it, but maybe at this point wouldn't recommend it. All right, so that's all for the review of episode 1. Look forward to talking to you guys. 1 and 2. Look forward to talking to you guys next week after we get episode 3. Cheers.